Alright, so here we are back with our Girard Perregaux 3387. Everything has been cleaned, taken out of the basket, the barrel's been serviced, everything is separated out into compartments as for what goes where, and we are all ready to bring this baby back to life. So we are going to start with the base plate, the stem, and here we are. The winding pinion and the sliding pinion is what we're going to start with. So cover this up, move that off to the side. We're starting here. I also have the technical documentation, which is right here for the actual movement. This is from Harry Winston, from another brand that we carry and that I work on. But Harry Winston uses the Girard Perregaux movement in some of their stuff. So, let's see. So slide this out the way. We'll get I've already checked everything, and everything is clean and done. Like I said, I already took care of servicing the barrel. I will probably put a different video up on how I do that at some point. It's pretty mundane, but it's a very important part of watch repair, and a lot of watchmakers don't do it for some reason. I don't know. I'm not quite sure why, but you know, whatever reason they don't do it, I am more than happy to do it, because it makes for a much easier job all the way around when you're not trying to save a part. You're replacing the mainspring and actually doing the entire thing. So here we get the base movement. Got our stem. Now the stem I run through the wash, but I'm also going to wind up after we're all done putting it together, putting the movement together and doing the timing, pre-timing on it. I will take that crown off and get the refinisher to get that refinished, and then he'll bring it back and I'll refit the stem to it. So I'm taking that stem a little bit of oil according to the technical documents. It's oil on HP 1300. A few spots. I don't know if you're going to be able to see this as I do it or not. That's fine if you don't. I still gets a little bit of oil on each one of the squares for the winding, for the sliding pinion. Little hint of oil on the pilot so it slides in and out. And a little bit for the setting lever. And then what I like to do is take and I put it in, and basically it's the same thing I do every time. Give it a little bit of oil, and then I'm checking to see that it moves nice and smooth. In and out is perfectly fine. You get that oil worked in there a little bit. Everything feels good. Nice smooth action back and forth. Not too tight. And certainly don't feel any large amounts of looseness in there. So now we've got that in. Now we're going to take the winding pinion, and we know that this is going to fit right in the slot there, and it's going to go through. But here on the teeth of the winding pinion, where it engages with the sliding pinion, put a little bit of Molycot, which is it's a white lithium style grease that stays in place where you put it, but it allows for some sliding friction. So put a little bit of that, a few spots. So we've got that ready to go. And we've got the sliding pinion. Now the sliding pinion is going to get HP 1300 right here in the slot. And what I like to do is once I've got that mollycott on there, is I'll take and marry the two of them together. There should be enough that it will stick. Should be able to stick them together. Fairly nicely, and then pick it up, pull this out, slide it out of the way, and we're going to actually put it right onto the stem, and then it makes it 100% easier when you come in like this. Keep yourself tilted up a bit until that slides right in there. Yep, she dropped off. So we make sure our orientation's right, pick it back up and put it back in there. Take it out a little bit, tilt it up enough, and get it started in on there. And get that square, there we go, get the square set. And then what I'll do is, obviously you can see the sliding pinion is sliding. So I'll slide it against the brigade teeth. I'll take it back. I'll turn this a quarter turn, press it again, back, quarter turn, press it, back, quarter turn, press it in. Now what that does is it makes sure that the mollycott that I put there is now evenly distributed amongst all the, fairly evenly distributed amongst all the teeth. So we're set there. This is the click for the reverser wheel. Now what we have to make sure is that there's not a lot of lateral play here, which there isn't. And we have to make sure that it sets right above this hole here. The technical documents say that it should sit right there, right above it, and that it should be armed when it's above the dot here. So I can see that it sits there. There's not any lateral play, and then I've got tension by the time I hit that other mark. Another thing that you need to make sure is, hopefully you can see this. This is the spring here. Now that spring revolves and hits the post here, but before it hits that post, it's got to cross over this area. And what you want to do is make sure that there's clearance. It's almost like hand clearance. You just make sure that it clears it, that it's not touching, that it's not rubbing. So I'm going to take a super close look at it. Using a 10 power loop to make sure that that isn't rubbing on there at all, and there's just enough space for it to that's setting right on that post. On that post, there's a small indent on there for the spring to rest against. So, all right, now that we've got that in, we're going to go back into the basket, and we're going to take out our serviced barrel, our ratchet wheel, with the 3 small screws that go with it, And we're going to put on, and get our barrel bridge, our intermediate wheel, and our barrel bridge screws. Screw to those. Alright, so get that. We're going to take and place a glass lid on this, slide it off to the side, and here's what we've got. Now we've got the barrel, which I've serviced, a ratchet wheel, which will go onto the barrel, and previously we took and smoothed off the small burrs here on the bottom, so that's ready to go. Our 3 screws that hold that on. Our barrel bridge, which we've got our intermediate ratchet wheel here, and the 3 screws that hold that bridge on. So we're going to place the intermediate wheel back in here. Remember, we put this screw on so we didn't lose that in the wash. Put this back in the right orientation, put our barrel on, put our ratchet wheel onto the barrel, marry these two together onto the plate. So first we'll do this, make sure what we're doing for oil there, we are looking at the same. That is going to be 1300 oil on here. So I'll pull this off to the side for a second, get my screwdriver onto that. Pops off, it's nice and clean. I double check the jewels for cleanliness, make sure that there's nothing out of the ordinary, everything looks good. And then what I like to do is when I'm doing stuff on the bench mat, even though my bench mat is clean, I'll throw a couple sheets of paper down, a couple pieces of wash paper down, and we'll start working on the wash paper, and then just throw the wash paper out when I'm done with it. So here we've got the intermediate wheel, and the screw that holds the bridge on to hold it on. Get myself some finger cuts here, so we're working nice and clean. Finger cuts, finger condoms, whatever you want to call it. I call it being professional and clean. So now what we're going to do, we're going to take a look at this. We've already made sure that we're looking at it. It's nice and clean. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and put a little too much oil on there. Take and oil the jewel. Look at our orientation here. That in. And these are nickel tweezers, not steel. But nickel scratches just as well, just because it anything sharp is going to scratch the finer aspect of the metal. So we got that in the right orientation. Same thing, a little bit of HP 1300 there. In place. Tighten it down. I'm actually using a steel screwdriver on this one because I want to make sure that that's driven in tight. And I will probably use steel screwdrivers on the plate, on the bridge screws as well. I'll start out with the bronze, but then I'll tighten it, finish the tightening with the steel. So now we've got this in. We want to make sure we got freedom. A little bit of end shake to it. You can see that. You can see that in the reflection of the light, I hope. Rotates nice. Looks good. So we're going to put that back in the container, and then we'll bring our barrel out. Looks nice and clean. Like I say, I've already serviced it, so there's no need, but I'll do something on that later on when I service another barrel, maybe for a Rolex, or probably for a Rolex. So we're going to get this lined up. We've got our 3 super miniature screws on this. And I mean super miniature. Same thing, I'm going to use a steel screwdriver on these ones because they need to be driven in and tight. So get at least one of them situated so that pop those other 2 in there. Yeah. So we got one in. There's 3 of them. I'll put a little more in. Now we got 2 of them tight. 3rd one. There we go. There's the 3rd one. So now what I want to do, I'm actually use my hand tweezers, which are nylon tipped. I'm going to come in, I'm going to hold this ratchet wheel tight, and then I'm going to finish tightening these screws up. Obviously you don't want them so tight that they strip, but you want them in fairly tight, and this way I don't have to worry about marring the teeth on the ratchet wheel or marring the finish on the barrel drum itself. So now we've got that set. We'll put this into our tray. First sheet gets tossed out. So it gets moved off to the side. Toss that out. Bring our movement back over. Alright. Looks good there. Now we're going 1300 here. Now here's where the great wheel goes, and that is going to be 1300 as well. So we'll put 1300 there. Now if you remember, this one is the one that rides the cannon pinion, so we're going to need to set that up as well. So we're going to go drop this into place. Make sure we're rotating on that. Put the lid back on here, keep the dust out. come back over to our container full of parts. Take out the great wheel and the cannon pinion. Put that back together. Pull out a bench block and a quartz hand setting tool. Because what happens is that the cannon pinion, find the right slot here so I'm supporting it correctly. The cannon pinion is going to go onto the post in this orientation. So what I do is I actually make sure that my quartz hand setting tool for our wheel fits on there, because I'm going to put it is 9501 grease inside the cannon pinion, and then I put it on there, press on it with the back of the tweezers till it's set, and then all the way down with the hour end of the quartz setting tool, so that this seats all the way down onto the pinion. So I'm going to take this here, we're going to get our 9501 and give it a little bit of lubrication inside of there. Hopefully you can see this. I can't really see the camera too much. Yeah, you can see that, okay. Alright, so it sits on there, like so. And remember, we've got it fully supported underneath. All I'm going to do, press like that. Now, that's on there, but it's not on all the way. So you come in here, and that presses it that last little bit. Now you can see on top here, you may be able to see that there's a bit of oil that's come, a little bit of lubrication that's come up out of there. And occasionally that will happen, and actually I got two different options. One is I can use some gray Rodico, which is my preferred option, to come in and remove that bit of oil. And the other option is to use a rubberized swab, like this is a small rubberized swab. I don't like the swabs too much. I use them mostly for the dial, but I can come in with a small amount of gray Rodico. That's it back in the pinion. I'm just going to lightly hold that there and just come in and take that away. I'm going to do that twice with a clean piece like that, and then that piece will go into a pile. I use that for, cleaning screwdriver tips or lifting stuff off of lifting parts out. It's a single-use small piece. So we're back here. We've already oiled for the pivot there. So this drops right in. I'll make sure that we've got that seated in there correctly, which it feels like it is. Come in with the bridge. Now I've oiled the intermediate. I have not oiled here, and I have not oiled here. I'm going to do that after we've got the bridge on. So make sure we get this lined up correctly. Come in, press down. So that's working. We're working. Alright, so now everything is seated. Now all I'm doing here is holding that bridge on with a piece of clear plexiglass probe. Pop one of these screws in here. Proper screwdriver for that. And I'm only going to put in one screw. I'm going to use my oiler. I'm going to come in and I'm checking. Now I'm checking for freedom. Make sure everything's rotating right. Everything is free. End shakes are good. Got a little bit of up and down action there. A little bit of up and down there. Everything has to be loose, but not too loose. You have to have freedom for it to work properly. Otherwise, if stuff is really tight, it doesn't go together.
What? Why are you nodding your head?
Because I'm making a video. I was making a video.
Sorry, I'll come back. An hour?
Yeah, an hour.
Bye bye.
Back. So once you make sure all that's in place, then I can put the rest of the screws in. We'll tighten that bridge down and then we are set to go on the train wheels. So checking to make sure if there's anything else before I tighten this bad boy down. Don't believe so. Wanted to make sure that this was out of the way and free. So, there we go. So that part's set. Alright, now we cover it up. Keep the dust out. And we're going to come in and take the train wheel bridge screws, and all of our train wheels. With the escape wheel, it's been treated with Epilom, intermediate, another reverser, so now it should be fairly straightforward and easy enough to do. Come in, we've already got the brake wheel. Put in the make sure we got them lined up in here right. Now, the other ones I did oil, on these ones I won't because I actually want to hit that oil from the other side. Do. Third wheel. Nope. actually the second wheel. Should slide right in. Okay, I see. So, now we're in. One of the things I like to do is, as I put them in, get one or two in, I'll just give a little tinge to the barrel just to make sure that stuff is in, it's seated, that it looks okay. This one is in upside down, so we get that seated in the right spot here. So we look good there, everything's in and rotating. Come back over here, we'll get our escape wheel and slide that in underneath. Here we've got our driving wheel, drives the reverser. Get a bear on that tension to fit the wheel into the pivot. So what happens is, even though that this is on there, when I put the reverser wheel in, it's going to give just that little bit so that wheel will be free. So take a look at that reverser wheel. And the reverser wheel has been treated with formula of Fixo-Drop mixed with a small amount of 90-10, so that when it's put in there, shaken up with the Fixo-Drop and the 90-10, it's taken out, the Fixo-Drop evaporates immediately and leaves just that super thin, fine coating of 90-10 on the pawls. Now looking at this, I actually noticed that there was a fiber on here, so I'll take that off. Occasionally there'll be fibers floating in the air that will land on stuff, even though I'm as fastidious as I can be in this space. It still happens. So now we want to get that in, and there we go. You see where it drops, and then now I've got the click on. Now there's one other piece that needs to go in there, and that's the sweep seconds pivot. Come back in here, pull that out, and that gets a drop of 90-10 on the tip before it goes in the hole. So we'll do that. It doesn't actually get a drop. I always say a drop, but it gets moistened with a thin coat of 90-10 on the tip. And it goes straight down into make sure that it meshes there, and I saw the wheels move, so we're good on that. Now we've got to try and get, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pivots in the hole on one bridge. Always fun. Really isn't all that hard. Of course, I say that now, that's before I spend 15 minutes doing it. So we make sure we get it lined up around about as much as we can. Get it dropped on there. Now comes the part where I enjoy, because now I'll try and get every single pivot into the hole. At once. So we got this one I can see. It's actually pretty hard to do on a camera. And that one. Alright, let's see. Looks like sometimes it's very tough to see, especially at this angle, where we're not dropping in. And that, I believe, is it. I know I've got the pivot for here, the reverser wheel, the center, the second. Now if I can get this over here, we're at the I think we're very, very close. I think the escape wheel is the only one that is not in. Now I'm putting pressure on here, but I'm not putting a lot of pressure. Because obviously too much pressure you're going to break the pivots. Straighten up that escape wheel, and by doing that I loosen the entire bridge up. So let's take her off and start over again. Alright, so we're good here, we're good here. Seems like we're sliding in and out. There we go. Good, 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 and the pawl is set on the reverser, and we're in the hole there. Alright, so let's try again. I think we just hit what's referred to as a miracle, because every single wheel is in. They are we're getting movement in all the right spots, so we're going to put in one bridge screw and see if we'll get one in there, and that's going to hold the bridge down. We're not going to put the screw in real tight, but tight enough that I'm able to go in and take a look at it from the side and see that pivots are in the right holes, that there's everything's running smoothly. Actually, it looks as though the escape wheel pivot is almost there, but not quite. Now it's there. Let's take and put another bridge screw partway in, and then we're going to check it again. Because, like I say, we certainly don't want to crank this down and wind up breaking a pivot on the wheel. So now I see that I've got my motion here. Check here, which I've got my wheel. I got my motion there. So we're good on that. Put this one on. Then we'll put this one on. Again, same thing, not tightened up all the way. We'll do one last check because we know we've got it in there and it's fairly tight. We've got movement there. We've got winding here. And that's, we've got our freedom there. So now we'll go ahead and tighten these down. All the way. And check for freedom. Make sure we've got our freedom. We've got our end shake that we need. We're referencing stuff properly. And then everything is lining up as it should. Other side real quick. Checking to make sure that the brigade teeth were able to wind it, since we don't have the sliding pinion, the lever for the sliding pinion on. I held the sliding pinion back while I checked to make sure that the engagement was going with the. We don't really have a crown wheel on this one. It's hooked into the escape wheel, or hooked into the automatic winding. So we've got a nice smooth wind there, and I can hear the train going on the other side. So we look good there. Flip this back over. So now we've got everything on. Everything's in place. I'll come back through and I'm going to oil my pivots here. I actually have to get closer and use a high power loop to do that. I'll lubricate everything on this side. Then what we're going to do, we're going to flip it over. We're going to start working on the other side, put everything together. Then I'll flip it back over. We'll put on the pallet fork and the pallet bridge, make sure that our adjustments are all correct on that, and then we'll add the balance in. So since I use a higher power loop, I actually need to be a little bit closer when I'm doing this oil in. So take that off, but since I can't get that close because of the camera, pull it off to the side here a bit. Make sure that she use a 10 power loop to oil with. Because you really want to make sure you're getting everything in the right spot. You want to be able to see it leave the oiler. And float down around the pivot. So make sure that I get every single one. And you also don't want to you don't want to put too much, and you want to make sure that the oil is not on the flat of the jewel. You want the oil to stay in the spot where it's supposed to be. You don't want it wicking away. Into wicking away from the pivot. And then 90-10 for the escape wheel, and for the center seconds wheel. And then once I've got that in, I try and the winding pinion still engaged a bit. I just give it a couple of turns to make sure that that oil is distributed evenly throughout on all the pivots. And then I was also looking, I'll oil one side. I give it that little bit of wind. What I'm doing is I watch the escape wheel, and when the escape wheel stops, I want it to turn back in the other direction for at least a small amount. What that tells me is that everything is operating properly. When you get, it's called backlash, and what that tells me is that there's enough freedom that the wheel goes and the wheel turns back just that little bit. So now that we're set on this side, we're going to take and turn it over, and we're going to oil. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to oil those pivots on the other side. Now, get away from the camera and make sure I've got this in there nice and tight. Okay. And now all I'm going to do is oil the pivots on this side. Hit the escape wheel first, because all the rest of them will get HP 1300. Put it on there. Clean her off. I had too much oil on the oiler. So as you have that, you just have to take it off and start over. Alright, third wheel, second wheel. Center seconds we don't need to oil because we oiled that one going in. The barrel we don't need to oil because we oiled that going in. Nor do we need to oil the pivot for the cannon pinion because we already had that oiled going in. stem came out when I tipped it to put stuff in. So now I'm going to do the same thing now that we're done with that. I'm going to hold that sliding pinion. I was hoping it would it just caught. So same thing. We're winding it a little bit so that all those wheels are turning, and then that helps distribute the oil throughout the watch, throughout the pivots on that side. Now if you can see, I don't know how tight in that camera is, the escape wheel is right here underneath here. You can see it move once I add enough tension onto it. So what I'm going to do is I'll give it a little bit of juice, and you can watch it. It'll go in one direction, and then it'll reverse. So hopefully you can see that. And just that little bit of backlash lets me know that there's all the freedom that's needed for the watch to run properly in that aspect. Doesn't mean it's going to run properly. So we've got that done. Make sure that's on nice and tight. Go to our next page in our documentation and see where we're going to pick up on this. So our next page, let's see, 1112. I'm looking through the numbers and making sure that we're putting it back together in the proper order, so that we don't have to lift one wheel up to put another one underneath it. So right now I'm going to take and pull the parts out and take a look. So we know we're going to do everything on the dial side, and the date wheel retaining plate, the setting lever, the sliding pinion, the setting lever jumper, all our wheels for the dial side. Make sure we've got everything out here. Date jumper spring. Setting lever, spring for the setting lever. Of our screws. And then our 4 screws for the plate. Now there's one that it actually does not show on the technical document. I'm looking to see where this one drops in at. I remember it being right around in this area. And it goes in right there. But this one needs to have tension on it. There's a spring underneath. Let's see if we can get that to engage properly. There we go. Now we've got that engaged, so it should be. Double check the documents as far as where it goes. And you know what? It actually goes on the other side because this is a post that comes up from the bottom up to the top. Now that's going to be a problem because we've already oiled the entire other side, and this actually goes in. Looking at it, this is going to go in on the bridge side, so we need to take the crane bridge back off, which does not make me too happy. But if I'm lucky, I might be able to edit this part out. We'll see if I can get a video editor program. Maybe I can take a look at that while my wife's out of town next week. See if there's some way to get some type of video editor program. So what we're going to do is we're going to take off our screws. Take the plate off. The reason this is problematic is because it spreads oil in other spots. So what we've got is our escape wheel, second wheel, third wheel, and this one goes right underneath that spring right there. So, just slide that. I'm hoping I can slide it in without taking the barrel bridge off. Yes. It appears that I can. Appears that I can. There we go. So turn it around and come at it from this direction. May wind up having to take this off camera to do it. It's not. I've got to actually get in a little bit closer than what that camera's allowing me to. Above the hole. in the hole and slide that spring off. Now I have to get that spring up so it's arming the it's in the hole, but the spring needs to come. You have to get in there with the oiler to a sharpened oiler to ease that spring up enough. Here we go. So spring is up, and there, now it's on there and armed. I actually have a small, I save my broken oilers and take and sharpen them and polish them so that they're rounded. I can use it for stuff like that. So now, taking a look at stuff. Making sure it doesn't look like any of the oils were too largely tore up. So that should look okay. So, a drink of water after that. Certainly will make stuff a little nerve-wracking. Alright, now what we've got to try and do, come back in with everything and be exact when we drop it in and exact when we drop the bridge on, so that we're not spreading that oil from those pivots all over the inside of the watch. But we can do it because it's not that big of a problem. Come in and drop it on there exactly right the first time. Alright, give me a second to need a small amount of oil on. Underside here. I'm actually going to take and clean this plate off. I don't like that. I want to take. I've got a benzene cup here that fresh benzene on it, or one dip. I mean, there's a number of things you can use. But this way, all that oil is off of there, and we're going to start out clean with it. So take and blow that benzene on there, get it dried off. Dried off without blowing those screws away on there. Since the lower pivots are in, it's the upper pivots that I'm worried about dragging that oil around on. So since I took and cleaned off the bridge, one thing I didn't show you that I did is we need to oil these as well. This gets a little bit of 1300 right here at where the jewel meets the post. This one gets a little bit of 1300 here, and then this one will get a little bit on the top of this spring, which I have to come in from the side and get. You won't be able to see that. So this is the crown wheel and ratchet driving wheels. A little bit of oil there, clean that oiler off. Make sure we got it nice and free. This is going to be tight, and I'll be able to use tweezers on it, but I don't want it, the oil helps keep it from being too tight. Piece of wood to make sure that you can come at this from the side, you get this other one in. A little on top of the spring and a little bit on the side of the spring. And then same thing, take and make sure that we get the right amount of freedom and tension with the piece of pegwood. Which, yeah, that's good. It's tight, but it's not so tight that it's not going to work properly. Got a little sliver of pegwood in there. Pop that out. Make sure it's clean. Okay, this gives us an opportunity to re-oil everything on that side as well. So, I really need to get a production camera.
Sure. No, I'll leave my watch now. I'm going to have a chance, okay?
How many?
Have a link?
Half a link? Okay.
Just, and remove the bracelet, please.
Alright.
Thank you.
One of the salespeople needing their watch size, their personal watch size. So let's try this again. Lined up. see one or two pivots in there, so we're headed in the right direction. Let's see if we can set there. Look at it from the side. Looks like this one needs a little adjustment. I think we're close. Close enough. I want to put one screw in. At least one screw far enough in that it's going to hold that plate on there. Now I'll try and get it the rest of the way. And I believe yep, we're good. And I think this is the last time I do a video. It's getting to be, the sales staff don't recognize what I'm doing. The rest of the staff do not care. And quite honestly, the store ownership doesn't care. So I care. So let's see. Like that. Good there. Tighten her down. Screwdriver needs a little bit of adjustment. Alright, so let's see. I know this side's already oiled, but I want to check that, check my winding pinion one more time before we get too far here. Yeah, okay. We're good now. We know we still need to oil on this other side. Need to re-oil all the pivots on that side. Still get that oiled. And then we can return back to the other side and start over where we were at. That's the 1300, 9010. It's the 9010. I actually shot over a hair on the on the jewel, so we go in with a clean piece of Radico and just get that up and out of the way. Do is use that small piece of Radico. We'll take out all the oil and re-oil it. Come back in with a scant amount of 90-10 on there. There we go. And then the same thing. Give her a couple lines, let everybody settle in. Make sure we got that little bit of back. A little bit of backstop there. We're good on. Flip her over and start up again. So now we're going to take a look through the parts here and see what direction we're going to go. Know that that's going on my date indicator maintaining plate's going to go on last. These are date jumper spring is going to be last. This and this, we can go with all those. Need a screw for that one. Date setting wheel. Take a look, see what we all got here. That one. Minute wheel. Day indicator driving wheel. Two separate ones here. So let's look and see what our documentation says, what order we're supposed to go in here. It looks like the date wheel is over here going on first. Now in my documentation it shows a screw here, so we know there's not going to be a screw there, but we need to take the oil post. That's one of the things, is these different generations come out. You know, first generation, second, third, fourth. They change certain things based on what they get back as far as warranty returns. So must have been enough warranty returns that it was an issue. Now looking at this, let's see, we've got a spring on the bottom here that's adding tension. So I'm going to investigate this real quick and see, because of course it doesn't show on the documentation. But if there's tension on a spring, normally you want to place something so it stays lubricated. So, and the reason is, especially with date mechanisms, is that there'll be a mechanism in place so that if somebody tries to change the date as the date is engaging in its change period, they don't break something. So I have a feeling that's exactly what we're looking at here. Is that yes, there's tension there, so that if somebody does something like that, they don't screw the watch up. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a small amount of 9501 down here where the spring hits the wheel for that tension. All that's going to do is give it that smooth motion. So just a little bit on each side, and then I'm going to flip her over and give it a couple of hold the gearing and give it a couple of turns to make sure that there we go. Yeah. It's got a ratcheting feel to it, which is what it should feel like. So now we can slide that onto the post, and that's set. We're also gonna, when we put the date wheel on, we're gonna put a little bit of HP 1300 on the pawls here, so it gives a nice smooth motion as it goes through. So, let's see what else we got going on. Trying to make sure, because of course now that I've verified this is a different version than what I have, I want to make sure that everything is going in the right place. So even though that's there.
Got to go down now.
Thank you. The gearing has to be right, so this one goes there. But I want to make sure that my orientation on it is correct in relation to the gate jumper, so I want to make sure that put it in this way. Yeah, it's meshing right there, and then our fits here, second position, hits that, yeah, okay.